changes, get the young lads on. But to be fair, there was still moments of great opportunity that we had even after the injury time. So no, I'm very, very pleasantly surprised, and we'll get into some of the players right now. But the main thing that I've been waiting to talk to you about is this. You talked last time on your stream about, the reason why you like the idea of Zaha coming in because he would have been an impact straight away. Well, I think we can both say, and a lot of people watching can say, that Buonanotte was an immediate impact in the game, and I'm surprised that he started. Thought he might have come off of the bench, but God, we need him. And what a sight for sore eyes he was in terms of creativity and progressive ball carries. Give it to me what you thought of Buonanotte.
Wow, I'm just going to bring him up now, but absolutely unbelievable. I think even from minute one, I was so impressed. So many aspects of his game that I really like. So let's talk about him here. Firstly, I think, Brighton, have you got any more players that you don't mind sending out on loan? I wouldn't mind him. But 19 years old. So what impressed me, I think right from the get-go, it was his defensive contribution. So he was actually playing up top in the 4-4-2 press. And, rather than Bobby Reed, and those two were linking together. And he was really tenacious. He was getting stuck in. He'd win the ball back. And better than that, when he got the ball, he actually drove forwards with it. He tried to make things happen. He tried to turn. He didn't shy away from it. You could tell that he played in a team that was used to being pressing football, trying to play forwards. Very good. And, in the second half, he slotted through an unbelievable ball through to Vardy, which we'll get to in a moment, which he maybe should have scored from. But that was so impressive. Obviously, one swallow does not make a summer, as they often say, but I'd love to see what he can do going forwards. Very good technically, very strong. I think we did see maybe some of the other areas that they did mention he might be a bit weak aerially, but wow, if that's for me, he was man of the match for Leicester. For me, he was the man of the match. There's someone else that I think we'll get to in a moment that I think you could consider to be up there, but very impressed, all-round contribution, made a lot happen, really exciting. And, I think there's going to be a question for a bit later on in the stream, but how do we fit all these players in? All of a sudden, this weak squad, is it so weak? Not sure. I do have a feeling we're going to fall in love with this player. That's maybe the only sad thing, but look, we need to stay up this season. And I'm guessing, like everyone, I think before the game started, I was really trepid, not really sure what to think. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, hang on a minute. Hang on. Is it on? This was a very good result, no matter what you want to say. Anything else you want to add to Buonanotte?
Yeah, big time. I think that I fancy him to really start to settle more and more and more. And he was developing a decent partnership with Vardy as well. The one thing I would love to see is Mavididi alongside him in the press, particularly from out wide. I think they could be a very lethal combination. Starting to see, we all talk about Fatah and Ndidi and how well they linked up on the right-hand side. Towards more the end of the season, Keenan Dewsbury Hall and Mavididi started to link up really well. And then you had JJ pushing up behind him. But look, this is a new season, new system. But I do want to see that and see how that would pan out. I think we should definitely talk about, though, how it got a lot better in the second half. But we should definitely be talking about how non-existently of a threat we had on the left-hand side, particularly in that first half.
Yeah, well, let's get to that. And let's just go through the game a little bit more. So first, I'm just going to bring up the stats, which is pretty interesting. So possession-wise, previous to the game, we said we think the game is going to be dominated by Spurs. There's going to be large passages of us holding on. There might be some mistakes we playing out from the back. They're going to look to try and press us and stop us getting going. All of these things were true, by the way. Apologies to everyone. I did say that Archie Gray would play. I forgot that Bentancur had recovered from an injury. Sadly, it looked like he picked up another one. And, I don't think I see any player get injured. So I hope he's all right. And then Archie Gray did come on. So before we get to the second half and even the left-hand side, let's just talk about that first half because it was pretty non-existent. And, I haven't got actually the stats to break down what happened in both halves because that actually looks like a very close game overall. But let's say the first half, wow, it was attack versus defense, and it wasn't our attack. So talk to me about the first half. What happened? How did you see it? What was happening and what could be improved?
First half, we didn't retain possession at all. They were pressing us the second that we got it out to the mid. Went almost to that lack of creativity again, but in my opinion, just the press was just really going against us. The left-hand side was very, very frustrating. We had a lot of times where we made some decent moves, started to build it up in the back a little bit, and then it was broken down with Christensen. I do think he had a better second half. At first half, there was about 2 or 3 times where he broke down the play. I felt like it looked like every time as well in the first half that instead of being kind of direct and building through the middle, out the back, through like Winks and Vestergaard, it was built out a lot more from wide and then try to progress it up the pitch. And it kind of broke down, as I just said, with Christensen. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think let's not get too savage on Christensen just yet, because I think he really did redeem himself. I think there was someone else, if I'm being honest, I think had a much sort of worse job of it. And let's bring him up, and it was this guy, Bobby Reid. I will give him some redeeming factors too when we get to the second half. But yeah, first half. So like I say, there was a few things that were notable. Firstly, even though it was 1-0 to Spurs, I didn't actually think it was that bad, which might sound quite controversial. The reason I think that is that I've always said you've got to be in it to win it. I think defensively we had a very compact 4-4-2. We were very tight. Spurs had corner after corner after corner, but it never really looked like they were going to score. I think we did get away with it a few times. Like Solanke had a few headers. Indeed, he cleared it off the line with a good clearance. Mads made a good save, but I don't feel like we felt we were hanging on. Spurs definitely had the game, don't get me wrong, right? And they could easily maybe have got more ahead than they did, but I didn't feel like it felt like it was a golfing class, but it didn't think like it wasn't like the Lons game where I was just like, oh my God, I mean, this is going to be a cricket score by the end of the game. I thought we were okay defensively, but how I felt that first half is I just felt if this was like a boxing match, this would be like one of those fights where we're going to huff and puff for 90 minutes and we're just not going to lay a glove on them. And, they're going to win. And if they really wanted to, they could knock us out, but they couldn't be bothered. They just want to get their fight money and go. That's sort of how I felt it was going. And I think two main reasons for that is that the few times when we got the ball, we couldn't really get going. I noticed that, and we called this before the game, as soon as Wilfred Ndidi received the ball, that was their pressing trigger and they closed him down. Now, Ndidi, we'll get to him. I think he actually had a very good game overall, but I think it's like a Wilfred Ndidi performance. So defensively, he was really good. When he received the ball, he was pressed and he couldn't always get out of it, which stopped the move from starting before it got going. He wasn't terrible at that. He definitely did, especially in the second half, managed to get it going a little bit more, and he almost scored. But you see both the pros and cons that he offers to you. Compare that to Buonanotte, even though he played further up the pitch. The thing that impressed me about him is every time he got the ball, he just played his way out of trouble and he got something going. And maybe there was a naive decision every now and again, but he just the play moved forward, which was great to see. Coming to Bobby Reid, I felt especially in that first half, he was very poor. He did have one audacious effort from about 40 yards out when Vicario cleared it, which was pretty poor. But otherwise, I felt that, firstly, got to call the goal. So Maddison had free reign of the king power. He was drifting all over the place, like a real number 10, dropping in deep, puts in a great cross in. Bobby Reid isn't quite on his man. He's not a million miles away, but it's that half a yard. And then Pedro Porro, one of the inverted fullbacks, rushes in, heads it in. It's 1-0. So could do a bit better there. But the rest of the time, every time he got the ball, just the move broke down. And it felt like in that first half that nothing was going to come from that left-hand side. Whereas on the right-hand side, two people who we could maybe speak about, which is this fella, I think he had a very strong game, James Justin. I think, to be honest with you, he did pocket Son. I've got to call it like that. Son did make some nice moves in the first half, but considering that Son, I would go as far. Is he world class right now? Don't know. He definitely was in his prime, Son. He scares me, I'm not going to lie. And Justin did very well. But look, overall, I think we've got to say that come half time, my kind of thinking of the game was, it's okay. I've seen a lot worse. We predicted the floodgates to open, and that hadn't happened. But it looked like a long, tough season ahead. Couldn't really see us scoring. Couldn't really see us creating much. The commentators on the TV channel that I was watching on were saying Leicester aren't brave enough in possession, and I agree. It just they too hesitant, didn't want to overcommit a man because they didn't. It was very pragmatic. And so second half, I thought it probably is going to be 2-0 or 3-0. I know overall it might not be that bad, but it's just like, all right, on to the next one. But the second half began, and even though we made no substitutes, biggest difference is we started pressing upfield. And Luke, tell me, what happened in that second half?
Second half, both of them redeemed himself. It started with a cross, I believe, from Christensen, come off someone, and then Cordova-Reid put it back in. Vardy, as Vardy does, puts it away. Absolutely amazing, gets the crowd going. And then after that, complete momentum change. We start being the one that press. Tottenham look rattled. They're starting to get close. We're pressing them straight as soon as the goalkeeper's has the ball. Everyone's closing their man down. We're locking the ball down that end of the pitch in our final third. It was great to see. And then Cordova-Reid just really started to get himself into the game a bit more. As we said, we'd give him his roses for the second half. And the same can be said for Christensen as well. Made some decent blocks, some decent crosses. Interesting as well, you say about Song, is he still world-class? And you had some moments with Maddison. Maddison was different than he normally was, a bit more of a playmaker. He was absolutely bossing that midfield, but went a bit quiet and then eventually got subbed off. And, mate, I want to – what do you make of the second half? Varney had a critical chance, and it was on target. It wasn't awful, but it was a shame he didn't put that second goal away. But we looked like the team to win in that second half.
Absolutely. And that injury to Bentancur, I think, as weird as it sounds, because I hope he's not out for a long time, but I think that might have saved Spurs. So it's a crazy game. So that second half start, and I felt like to begin with, we actually started a bit better. It was noticeable that we pressed upfield and started trying to press it more, which is understandable because we're the team that's like on the back foot. We gave a corner away after, I think, 2 minutes. It's like, all right, here we go. It's about 14 corners to nil at that point, something crazy. And it did feel like we were riding our luck. Like, I think Solanke had a chance again, and the commentator was saying, like, oh, Spurs might rue their chances. And I think I even said to you at literally this point in time, I was like, you know, what's funny about football is that what often happens is when you don't take your chances and you should put the game to bed, is that the other team will just score with their first opportunity on goal. And almost, I think, 20 seconds after I said that, we spring the break. It was Fatawa with the cross, but it's in a lovely little cross. Vardy with a great head down. Fatawa is doing his little dance. And we've stolen it, literally out of absolutely nothing. We'd scored a goal. I do think we made one attack before that, though, where we didn't get it into the box, but it went out wide. And yeah, Christensen, and this was after, so Christensen put a really good cross in, and Vardy took it down his chest. And look, what I can say is that goal just breathed confidence into the team. And from that point on, it was a totally different game. We started pressing up much higher. And what you could see is the belief in the team. All of a sudden, I think they felt, you know what, we've ridden the storm. And it was noticeable, the body language. Like Spurs, I could see that they were like, I can't believe this. You know, we should be, you know, resting by now. I should be coming off as a substitute because we've won this game 3-0. Instead, it's 1-1, and all that good work that they've done up until the 60th minute is wasted. And it's a battle again. And I think fair play to Ange because he put 4 subs on because he recognised that I think they were losing the fight there. And Leicester was starting to win all the individual duels. Now, you mentioned Bobby Reid there, and what I think, you know, I still think overall I'd probably give him a 6 out of 10, maybe even a bit lower. But one thing I'll say to him is as the half progressed, his energy started paying a big difference. And all of a sudden, he was mopping up the loose balls. He was winning the ball back high up the field. He was playing other people in. I think one thing that I liked today is that I felt that the team overall was quite unselfish. So there was a point in time late on in the game after Mavididi cam was on. He wins the ball out on the wing, and he could, like, I feel like the Mavididi of last season would try and beat 3 men and score himself. But instead, he was intelligent enough to dink the cross out to Ndidi, who almost scored. It was very nice to see. Loads of good play there. So, yeah, I think after we went 1 up, I mean, yeah, then let's talk about probably the crucial moment in the game. So again, we win the ball, we turn it over, really nice play. We're starting to play through the lines. That was something that improved. Goes to Buonanotte. Him and Vardy are making quite a good partnership, but just a very, you know, I'm detecting a bit of a Okazaki-Vardy bromance there. Buonanotte slots it through to Vardy. It is on his left foot. He does test the keeper, but Vicario, he's given him the angle to shoot there. And if we're being honest, JV should have scored, but you can't take anything away. He's still got us back in the game. He barely has a touch for 60 minutes. He gets the goal. After that, he looked like a man possessed. It was very good. And I felt at that point, I didn't want to tempt fate, but I think if you're a neutral, you think Leicester are going to win this game. Bentancur then goes down with a nasty injury, puts 9 minutes of injury time on. That killed the flow. Even then, I still think we had chances to win it. So it was good to see. So there's much more that I can talk about there. And I'll just add to one comment here, though. So, because obviously there was a change in approach in the 2 halves. And, you know, someone's put here, Sean, thank you for your comment. You know, I'll just put any points we can get. I just don't want to see us play like that first half ever again. And I definitely appreciate that because we were poor. But if I being honest, I feel it's a bit of like maybe a bit of a rope-a-dope here, you know, like be pragmatic that first half, make sure you haven't lost the game and then look to attack the second half. I'm not sure that is the approach we should always use, but I think you've got to say that Spurs, they finished 5th last season, £60 million player up front. They've got a £70 million striker on the bench. They've got so much quality. You've got to be a little bit kind of respectful. And Look, you and I, we were very negative about Steve Cooper prior to this match. And I'm happy to say, look, I want the manager to succeed. I want the team to succeed. I will have some things to say about the lineup, but the game plan worked. And that's why we got something out of it. But Luke, keep telling me about that second half, because there's a lot of good stuff to enjoy in that half.
I would like to talk about something just overall in terms of the defense. Now, we'll get into what we both think and Ricardo not being in the lineup, but let's just talk. I just want to talk about defense for about 5 minutes. And the thing that interests me is without Ricardo, I've always thought that JJ was better on the right hand side. Ricardo offers something different with building it out from the back. But let me just say that there was about 3 or 4 times where JJ turned over the ball and made an interception, which was absolutely crucial. And that was almost like a press trigger for us. That began with JJ turning over the ball. So he offers something different from Ricardo Pereira. Now, I want to talk about, we've been quite calamitous with defending set pieces. We gave away, as you said, about feels like 4 or 5 corners in like 8 minutes or something mental like that. And
Oh, yeah, that was crazy.
It was crazy, but we cleared most of them. Wasn't calamitous, and which was good to see. Overall, I think the defense was quite solid, and we need to give them their roses a little bit. I think Vestergaard was decent. FaZe was decent. JJ was absolutely brilliant. He was borderline my man of the match. Pocketing Song, a lot of good turnovers, interceptions. What do you make of like JJ and also not having Ricardo Pereira?
Yeah, so that's probably the big talking point. Now, look, on this channel, we often talk, maybe we overdo it a little bit, but, we're huge fans of Ricardo Pereira. We've gone for, Wilfred Ndidi instead of him. And I think you see both the pros and cons. So first of all, I think Wilfred Ndidi, I'd probably give a 7 or even 7.5 out of 10 for that match, because I think overall he did well. Specifically on set pieces, he headed it clear. It was a physical presence, cleared it off the line. He made lots of good tackles. He won the ball high up a lot. Where he's a bit weak is, as I said, is that Spurs, their pressing trigger was Ndidi. It was just so noticeable. Just look back at the game again, you'll see that every time he got the ball, they snapped on him 4 or 5. And that's what he doesn't have that Ricardo can offer you, that ability to play out of trouble. And that's one reason why I think in the first half we looked a bit limited on the ball, because we just couldn't get going. So for me, it's like, should he be playing in that position in the double pivot? Look, ultimately, it's worked out. I think coming on to JJ, yes, I think you could definitely make an argument for him being man of the match. And I think if it wasn't Buonannote's debut, maybe even I would tend that way as well. I think defensively, he was superb. He was supporting the attack even at times, even though he's not supposed to be the raiding fullback compared to Christensen. Up and down, won the ball back a lot, intelligent decision-making, rarely made a mistake, recovered if he did so. Very impressive. What I will say is then you could say, okay, so in this team, if we're going to line up this way, is JJ playing up against Ricardo for that position? And I think if you're playing against a team who's got a really top-class winger like Son, it's better to play JJ. I think if you're playing a team that you think you can attack, and we're going to talk about that at the weekend because we're going to be playing Fulham, maybe you put Ricardo, maybe you can have both. There's an argument either way. But look, at the end of the day, you've got to judge the manager, I guess, on the performance and the results. They're able to select their own game plan, and it has worked today. And, we've got an inferior squad compared to Spurs. We haven't even got all the players we wanted to. It's 1-1. The XG shows that the game was pretty close. 1-1's probably the fair, reflection of the game. 2 big chances each. Sure, they had more shots, they had more possession, but possession is 9/10 of the law, but that other 10th is what can get you stuff. So I think that was good. But look, for me, I've always said that I feel that maybe not now that Buonannotte's here, but I think in terms of technique, Ricardo's the best player that we have in the squad. So I feel if you're a manager and you can't utilize him somehow, that's a bit of an issue. But we can talk about that a bit later. And, we've got the Oliver Skip problem. Like, how does he get into a team like this now? That's a good problem to have. But that's how I see that. But you know what? I'd like to ask you a bit more about this, because I think you're being a little bit unfair. His image hasn't even loaded up. But I think that Vestergaard had a very good game. I think that you mentioned this in our pre-match preview, how one difference when we played Lons is we just couldn't play our way out of trouble. Yet I felt today that wasn't the issue. And I think that Vestergaard, multiple times, we were worried, would the pace be an issue? No, it wasn't. He, was successful at turning with the ball, making things happen. He was very much a bit like Lewis Dunk sometimes does this for Brighton, where thanks to him, he starts the attack. So I wouldn't say he was our best player, but I think he was very good. I don't think he put a foot wrong, and I think it was noticeable. And then coming back to your point pre-match, is you mentioned to me how you felt that like when we have Vestergaard and Ricardo in the team, that gives us the base to play. So that's just maybe my angle there. But horses for courses is perhaps the way to go. So what did you make of Vestergaard and also his partner in crime, Wout Fass?
That's what I was saying to you before. I agree, and like he's the biggest like concern for me, like in the Premier League before we came up. Even when he was doing really well in the Championship, was how is he going to go with turnovers and pace and transition? But I think having Vestergaard, sorry, I think having Christensen and both JJ with a pace makes up for that. I thought he had a great game. I thought he picked out well. He tracked back well. I thought overall he had a solid 8 out of 10 game. To be honest with you, Vestergaard, he didn't really put a foot wrong.
That's high praise for him, I would say. And what did you make of Fass?
Fass also decent, made a few crunching tackles when he needed to. He didn't do anything to really stand out, but at the same time, he didn't really do anything wrong either. So, like, if it was like a score thing for me, it'd be like a 7. I don't know what you make of him. Like, we didn't see him make any of those roving runs forward, but to be honest, if you're against Tottenham, that's not something you'd want to see. We could get caught undone. So, I think discipline and positioning wise, actually, that makes me think about it more that he was actually quite decent. Sometimes he can go missing and have lapses of concentration and not track his man. So for me, I thought he was 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. I think, what was impressive about the team in general is that when we were back in the 4-4-2 compact shape, which we had to play a lot, we looked very resolute there. And like I say, the goal that they scored, that's a pretty good goal they scored. Like, that it wasn't easy. I think in general, both the centre-backs dealt with the threats they had to do. They got stuck in when they had to. With Fass, we always say he's a bomb scare sometimes defending, and I didn't feel that way this time around. So I was impressed with how he performed overall, and I think he was decent. And, one thing I will say that I think is interesting just in general with the way that we played is that, especially at the start of the game, Mads was really kicking the ball long quite a few times. And I think that was actually smart because what I thought might happen is that we might make some mistakes early on with trying to pass it out from the back, concede the goal early and therefore lose. And that has sometimes happened to us when we were under Enzo. Now, I think in the Championship, even if you concede after 5 minutes, you're like, yeah, but we're still going to have so many chances. It's not going to be a problem. But I think this time round, it wasn't bad. I do think in the first 20 minutes, and again, why we looked poor in that first half, is that because we kept just bashing it downfield, it meant that we just turned it over, right? It was attack versus defense. I mean, what was happening is like, okay, it goes to Mads. Mads kicks it long. Oh, Romero picks it up. Romero plays it into Bentancur. Oh, their attack has started again. Leicester aren't pushing up further than the halfway line, which is what we changed in the second half. And that was the pattern of the game. Then we did start to play it out and we did actually make a few mistakes. So of course, that's the sort of like plus and minus of doing that. But in the end, I think then we did start making chances from playing out from the back. So I hate to say it, but, Steve Cooper did say that, the way we'll play this season is not going to be too drastically different. It's going to be about tweaking it. And it worked. I think you got to give the guy some credit where it's due. And were Spurs poor? No, I don't think so. Poor maybe with their finishing. Like Solanke, I think you could tell he felt the pressure. And maybe on another day they would have got the 2 or 3. But they didn't. And then we got back into the game and we used that wave. And I wonder what they think. I mean, they'll probably say that they think they probably should have won it, but they'll probably appreciate that they could have lost it. And normally in a game like that, you've got to say that as a draw is a fair result. So, yeah, lots of opinions there. But talk to me, what are you thinking?
Well, granted, some of them were pretty tame, but let's also not forget Mads made like a good 4 or 5 saves. I know that a lot of them, like I said, tame, kind of straight at him, but he still made them. One of them, he could have, parried the ball off, and he actually caught it, and it was from close to it, and it was a decent strike. So Mads was half decent as well, and that goal I don't really blame him for. Like that was a great ball from Madison for that header. So thought he had a decent game. It's a shame to not see him further the pitch, but he made a lot of brave running out and then scooping up the ball where he could have lost a 1v1. So I think Mads Madsen deserves some credit and praise as well.
Yeah, I think overall he had a strong game. And it's funny, we sort of saw a slightly different side of his game today. That's something that I think some fans have sort of unfairly labelled at him. Like, oh, he's good on the ball, but he's not that good at actually being a goalkeeper. And I'm like, are you mad? Have you not seen this guy play? Like, he's a very good shot stopper. Yeah, maybe he's not absolute elite, but he's a good shot stopper. And he's good at playing that sweeper keeper role. And I think he was crucial, and he didn't really make any flaps. Look, I've got to come back to set pieces again because that's been a nightmare for us. And I'm really impressed that in a game where how many corners do they have? If you can bring that stat up for me, they had so many corners, did Spurs, that we've managed to, keep a clean sheet. And not a clean sheet, you obviously conceded one. So, you know what I mean? We didn't concede from a set piece and we look pretty comfortable. So I think that's, pretty good overall. Yeah, Mad's very good. Yeah, look, so we can come back to the game again. We can talk about it, or maybe we can kind of talk about what's going forwards. But here we go. We've got the stats for me. Okay, here we go. So let's just take a close look at the stats. So you go shots on goal in the end. Yeah, look at the corners, 13 corners. I'm pretty sure, Luke, am I wrong? We had our first corner in the 89th minute. Crazy.
Yeah, we did too, and it was a little bit lackluster to be fair. But Richarlison kicked it straight out, and then we had another decent one. But look at that, so 5 saves, and you've got 13 corners, and about 7 of them were in about the first 10 minutes. So,
Yeah.
in the end, 29% possession, got it back up a little bit. 3 shots on target. One of those was Vardy's. What do you make of? Look, we'll get into the Fulham game as well because now that is now a much more exciting proposition and a lot more optimistic. But Fatawu, what did you make of Fatawu growing into that game as well?
He was effective. Actually, I'm just going to bring this up. So this is SofaScore's ratings. Now, this is obviously take it with a grain of salt, but they tend to use like statistics to kind of back up this rating. And so it generally looks at, like how many successful passes, how many tackles, how many interceptions. And so I bring this up because if you look at this, Fatawu is actually our highest rated player on 7.8. And I think that's because when he did get the ball, he created a threat. He was certainly a lot better than pre-season. That's one thing I've got to say. But I remember him winning a few tackles even centrally. He obviously provides the assist for Vardy. And look, could he make the step up to the Premier League? I think he can. I wish he got the ball a little bit more, but look, compare him to Bobby Reid on the other side. He got a 6 to definitely a worse performing player. And Abdul's just 20 years old. I think he was overall pretty good. You can see Mads had a very high rating there as well. I think unsurprisingly, look, for Spurs, their best player was both Maddison and Porro. So I think Maddison was the best overall for me. So yeah, I was quite impressed with Fatawu, and I think it's exciting. Look, he's already got a goal contribution, but why he was so highly rated is if you looked at his stats, he was like made a lot of big chances. That was the key stat he led on. So very promising, I think, to see him offering that. And yeah, I think we still got to work on the balance of the team because I think that, like I said, we've called out Bobby Reid and Christensen there. Just coming back to this again, Christensen not bad there, like a 7, but you can sort of see that if this is our left-hand side, you compare it to the right-hand side, and that's the story of the game. We were much stronger going down this right-hand side than the left. That's where our goal came from. Although I felt like when Mavididi came on, he was not bad. In fact, maybe let's just talk about Mavididi quickly and the subs that we made before we move on to the Fulham game quickly. So we made 2 subs, no, maybe more than that, but we brought on Samare for Buonanotte and we brought on Mavididi for Vardy. What did you make of those changes?
Mavididi still naturally drifted out wide as well, which is interesting. And to be honest, if Samara is going to come on, I would rather him come on higher up the pitch than I would actually deep, like in Didi's position. He can be poor chasing his man down. So he has got a bit of an engine going forward, but tracking his man, he's nowhere near as good. So a lot of people think there's a player in there. I don't believe so on that holding midfield position. I think he'd be better further up the pitch, but we haven't seen that too much from him. So Mavididi, I understand, as I said, he can do a striker's role, but he's not an out-and-out striker. I still would have rather Cannon come on and then Mavididi come on for Cordova-Reid. I think that would have been a much better option, and that's hopefully we see Mavididi starting against Fulham. Also, someone to mention as well as like a ball of energy when he came on, McAteer, very decent option. Yeah. I actually think it's worth having him in the squad this season, and he was decent. That header nearly went in. If they had a bent in, that would have been amazing. McAteer, not on for that long, but like offered something when he came off the bench, and that's all you really need at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, he probably had 15 minutes in total, given that we had so much injury time. You can see he was the highest rated of the players that came on. So for us, at least. So he was pretty impressive. And you're right. I think that ball of energy, it makes a big difference. Perhaps the one sort of negative I would say that look, Spurs made all of their subs. In fact, they made 6 subs. I'm guessing because one was a head injury or something like that. So they were allowed to do that. We only made 3. 3's not bad. It's probably better than Enzo, but you can see that we waited quite long till the 80th minute to make those changes. To be fair, you could look at the bench and say, who else are you bringing on? Maybe could have brought on Cannon. Maybe could have brought on Hamza. Ricardo, I would always, like I said, I'm a big Ricardo fanboy for obvious reasons. Great player. You could maybe have brought him on. But to be fair, of the two teams, we looked the one that had more energy by the end of it. I do remember you saying that you felt Ndidi looked a bit gassed towards the end, and I would agree. So that's maybe where I'd put Ricardo on. But otherwise, I felt like we didn't really tire. We looked maybe the more likely to score. And, I think overall it's kind of crazy. Like, did we deserve the 1-1? Probably did on a balance of play. So pretty good. So look, I tell you what, we're going to do obviously a much more in-depth analysis of that once we've had time to sort of study the details. But I was very encouraged what we could see. And look, maybe just to round off, I think we can talk about what's going to be going on. So we've got Fulham up next. And who I've brought here is Oliver Skipp, who's got to be the world's oldest looking 23-year-old I've ever seen. He looks older than me and he's 23 years old. Ex-Spurs player. We didn't mention Harry Winks, but Harry Winks had a good game today. So the reason I'm bringing up Skippy, as he's going to be known as, is that, to be honest with you, with the way that we lined up is, how does he get into the team? I agree. I think the change that is obvious to make is to replace Bobby Reid for someone, and it should be for either Mavadidi or McAteer, one of the two. But then you've just signed a player for 20 million. Where's he going into the team? For whom? I'm guessing he just starts on the bench because Buonanotte is surely not coming out of the team after that performance. How do you think he's going to fit in, and what are you thinking about Fulham in general?
This is interesting because it's actually one of my notes that I've got written down here. It's the last thing I wanted to bring up with you is where Skipp gets put into the team. And for the money we've spent, he's going in that team. It was way too soon for him to come in today. This is going to sound crazy, and there's no merit behind this. But if I had to pick someone, it would actually be Winks. Not that I'm not saying that I want Winks to not start. Of course, he's our most crucial player, but then you could say the same about Pereira. So he, like for like, if you had to pick someone that he's like the most similar player, you would say Winks. So, playmaker, deep playmaker. So it very well could be for Winks, maybe for Ndidi. But again, he's been even more of an expensive re-signing. So I don't think it's going to be for Ndidi. Could it be higher up the pitch? Maybe. I don't think so. Buonanotte, I think, is going to keep his position unless Mavadidi gets put up as a striker instead of Vardy and he gets a rest, because we've got quite a quick turnaround for the Fulham game. And then maybe Skipp gets pushed higher up the field, maybe in for Cordova Reid, maybe. But I don't see that working. It's an interesting one. What do you make of that?
I think it's a good problem to have. Yeah, I think, look, to be fair, you need to have a strong squad. And we definitely said that last season, a big issue was that if Harry Winks got injured, we were in trouble. Interestingly, of all the people who I know who support Spurs, they actually say that they considered Oliver Skipp to be a better player than Harry Winks. Now, to be fair, they say that Harry Winks had quite a big injury a few seasons ago. So their exact words were this. They said, pre-injury Winks was the better of the two, but I would take the 21-22 Skippy over current Winks any day of the week. I think I've remembered that correctly. Those were their words. And that's very encouraging because, again, today, Winks was super solid, very good performance. So now we don't, I think, need to worry so much if he gets injured. That's nice to know. He doesn't need to come into the team. I don't think, it's interesting. Do you take Ndidi out for Ricardo? He's not going to do it. He's not going to do it after that performance. And look, given that it worked, it's fair enough. So look, I've just brought up on screen here. So Fulham played Man United in the very first game of the season. They were quite unlucky to lose this one, I've got to say. I don't know if you saw the match. It was really dull, I've got to be honest. There was actually a championship match going on at the same time that finished 4-2. And I was like, well, maybe the top league isn't the top league after all. Man United, I think, were a bit lucky to get the win, but they had quality off the bench. So here we can look at Fulham, and it's been a while since we've played Fulham. Last time we were in the Premier League. Unfortunately, last time we played them, they absolutely battered us in that awful, was it 5-0, 5-1 win at Craven Cottage, which is basically the result that condemned us to go down. But looking at their team, it's pretty strong, but also something to be got at. So, they've got Rodrigo Muniz, who breakout season last year. They've signed Emil Smith-Rowe, but no Palhinha. And, I'm looking at their fullbacks, Kenny Tete and Anthony Robinson. I think our wingers would fancy their chances there. Calvin Bassey, believe it or not, is an ex-Leicester player before he went to Rangers. Issa Diop there. And Maybe their double pivot of Sasa Lukic and Pereira, something to be got there. So, look, I think our kind of impression here is that we were fearing the worst at the start of the season. So, how 90 minutes can change it? Hey, Diego, welcome to the stream. After that match, all of a sudden, I've gone from I think we're going to lose the first 5 games of the season to hold on. How many points can we get in this first 5 games? We've got Fulham. I fancy we can get something here, but I think the bigger thing is that this game I'd expect to be a lot more even. Now that could be good or bad, right? So the first game we've played here, we've done the classic 30% possession, try and get smash and grab. But as Tom's put here, we've got to step up and get the points from the likes of Fulham and Palace, etc. Totally agree. Or even if we don't get points, as Sean mentioned right at the top of the stream, we've got to attack, right? I want to see the second half performance in the first, even if we end up losing the game. Because if we're going to get 3 points, these are sort of teams we've got to get 3 points against because we've got a chance. So going into this game, how are you feeling? Of course, we're going to do a preview on this before the match starts, but what's your initial take on the Fulham lineup and how is Steve Cooper going to take on this challenge?
If it were me, the first thing that screams to me is I would swap JJ as much as I like him on the right to put him on Traore. I think he would have him on ice. Traore probably has the biggest legs in the whole of the Premier League. I think JJ would get the better of him on the left side. I think he'd be much faster than him. I think he would. That's a duel that I think could be won. And then that would afford an opportunity for Pereira to get back on the right-hand side, where we would love him to be as well, just in the team in general. But for me, that's a team to be got at. I'm looking at that now, and I think, like you said, I think our wingers would have their fullbacks on ice if it was Mavidine for Fatawu. And I think that's a lot more. I think we could build out a lot easier from the back against these guys than we could obviously against Tottenham. Now, I think this is a game that we will go in a lot more attacking minded, looking at this now, and from what we've seen from Fulham, which is granted very little, I can see us having more possession. That's my prediction against Fulham than they will have against us. And I think that we're going to be feeling confident after that. The belief's now there, which is what we needed against Tottenham. So I fancy us to get a result against Fulham. But then again, I thought we were going to get battered 5-0. So it'd be just so like me to have egg on my face and give us the kiss of death. So if we lose, you can blame me.
Basically, we're saying we're plastic and we change our mind more often than the wind changes direction. A few things here. Someone said, well, personally, I believe we got lucky this game because any other day Tottenham would have taken their chances. Look, you've definitely got a point there. They could have run away with it. But I think equally, going back to the stats, you've got to say that overall, you look at the stats and 1-1 is not that unfair reflection on the game. It's if my mother had wheels, she'd be a bike. That saying, or my grandma had wheels, she'd be a bike. It's not. That's how the game's played out. Vardy maybe could have won it for us. So, you could say on another day, Spurs got lucky because they didn't lose it. I wouldn't go quite that far, but I think it was like a fairly even match if you look at the overall context of it. For Fulham, a lot of people are saying, they're very physical. We need to score. Look, for me, whilst I think we can get something of it, I still look at it as a free hit. And to me, I think it's more of like a scouting or a reconnaissance stroke mission, right? So if you remember that cup game last season, we played Bournemouth and we beat them. And look, even if we'd have lost that game, what I think was interesting about the game was like, do you know what? We're not that bad. In fact, we're quite good because we can compete with the Premier League teams. And I know that Bournemouth team was missing Solanke, but they had a lot of their best players. Our team, for example, we lined up with Yunus Akgun, Dennis Pratt. So it wasn't our best team and we still beat them. So what I'm saying is going into this game against Fulham is I feel like a similar way. It's like they might win. It might be a draw, which is probably the result I would go for. Maybe we'll win. But I'm more judging the performance. Like, even if we lose, but like we went toe-to-toe with them and it looked like we could hurt them, I'll be happy. What I'm not hoping, what I'm hoping is we don't go there and we get battered kind of thing, which I would be surprised on that now, given the initial result that we've just had and we've got confidence in it. But at the same time, I think the season that we had to stay up, I thought if ever we were going to get some points, it might be against Fulham, and they absolutely destroyed us. So they might be thinking that they've got us on toes. And I think some of the newer players in our team, we need them to sort of step up and show what they can make of it. But yeah, otherwise, I'm looking at their team and I feel that like the big loss for them, obviously, is Palhinha. And him not being there, I think makes me a lot more confident. because I think that means that, like, here's the thing, right? Even if we don't play Skip, we saw today that midfield of Ndidi, Buonanotte, Winks, we didn't create so much, but they could compete. And especially in that second half when we started pressing more, we were winning a lot of individual battles and duels. And that's the thing that I think the last time that we went down, it wasn't because we didn't have talent, because we had talent. But Yuri Tillemans was thinking about his next move. He didn't want to get injured. Madison, I think, was thinking about his next move. Maybe not so much, but, he wasn't diving into challenges and we were backing off and we were getting bullied. And as you say, Luke, you love to snap a few legs in your time. You're a bit of an old school defender in that way. And I think we could do a bit more of that. So that's how we have to go. But I mean, we'll do the pre-match preview, but I think it's, fairly even. Their squad overall's probably got a bit more quality than ours. I think they might add some more players to their team or squad before the game starts, but we definitely will have at least one more player to pick in, Oliver Skip. I don't think he starts, but he'll probably come on. And yeah, I just look forward to it. I don't know how it's going to go, to be honest with you. I have to do some more analysis, but I'm intrigued. And I think, to be honest with you, after that game, even though it'll only be 2 games in, we'll have a good indication of what the season might be, just because we'll have played like a top team that's going to dominate possession, and we'll have played a team where it might be a bit more even. I suppose the only one that's missing then is what happens if we play one of the other bottom 3, where we would probably expect to have more of the ball. Although I will say that I think this season, the games against Southampton and Ipswich, it will just be a slugfest. It'll be one of those where it doesn't matter if you play absolutely awful, you just got to get the points. It can be the crappiest performance in the world. If you get 1-0 away at Portman Road, you'll take that. And here we go. Interesting. Sean said Cooper says he wants to add more in attacking positions before Fulham, or at least before Villa. We've definitely been linked with a whole bunch of players. I mean, basically linked with everyone. And my suspicion is that deadline day will get at least 1 or 2 more players. It's just got that written all over it. I wonder if you've got any outside bets on who you think will end up rocking up at the King Power by the end of transfer window. But talk to me about Fulham in the transfer window, Luke.
I don't want to talk about transfer window anymore because I'm sick of getting my hopes up and not getting at the players that we've been linked with forever. But I would rather just wait and see what kind of a surprise we have in store, because every signing we've made's come out of nowhere and everything that we've wanted and we've been linked with has fallen through. Fulham feeling very optimistic. Very anxious to see. I think the part of the reason, just to closing thoughts, is that the defense looks so good is because we had Wilfred Ndidi had a great game in front of them, which is when he's at his best, where we look good, that intercept player winning the ball back, but he's got Winks alongside him. So you say that, a bit of a pressing trigger is isolating and pressing Ndidi the second he gets the ball. And that's going to be a big job for Harry Winks to be there and support for him. So that's definitely something that I think can be worked on. Not that it was bad, but I think that's something that could definitely help Ndidi. I think Winks in support of Ndidi is much better than what Tillemans was at the end of Rodgers' reign. So
yeah,
I think Fulham, I think that's a game that can be won. That's a team that can be got at. And I'm feeling a lot more optimistic, obviously, than I was the last time we did the stream. But then again, we still have to be humble. We still have to not, have egg on our face again. But I would like to see some more signings, obviously, in attack. But let's just wait and see what happens. But as it stands, that if we're going to be expecting to have way less possession in the Premier League, having Skip, Winks, and Ndidi in that midfield, yes, it might be devoid of creativity, but it could be, a lot more structured in terms of defense and maybe counter-attacking football, which is what I was dead against before the season started, but you can kind of see how it would work. But again, going back to our point while watching the game, you don't want to be withstanding wave after wave after pressure, because you can't sustain that a whole game. But we are set up to be able to do that for a decent period of time if need be.
Yeah, I mean, that I mentioned that to you when we did our season preview with Oliver Skip. And yeah, to be honest with you, today's game, it's like I even said to you, I said, I could see us getting something out of it. And if we did, what will happen is we'll have to defend well, but Tottenham will give you chances because of the way that they'll play. And we'll just have to take those chances on the break. And that's kind of what happened. And we almost won it. And so that's why I think that's a reasonable signing, because you have to be combative. Look, I definitely think we need a bit more on attacking things. So I've seen some of the comments here. Diego said, you know what I'm scared of? We can play like that all season and choose to go light on reinforcements now. And that scares, the hell out of me. Look, I think we're definitely going to see 2 more players. We'll definitely see a striker, and I think we'll definitely see someone that could play for Buonanotte, because you picked this out already when we did the season preview, which is that we thought we might have one player like that, but if he gets injured or he doesn't perform, we've got nothing. And again, in this game, I kind of feel that without that, what would we do? So I think one more player will come in like that. We've been linked with so many. Reece Nelson, Wilfred Zaha. It will probably be some random name, right? But I could see someone turning up. And on deadline day, you always get crazy moves. Like I remember a few seasons ago, like Mesut Ozil goes to Arsenal. Okay, that was quite a long time ago. But you know what I mean? You do get these crazy ones. I'll see someone rock up. I mean, Chelsea have got about 7 million players. So worst comes to worst, Enzo will send someone over to us. Whether or not they're good or not, that's a different story. But I can see someone like that coming. Go for it.
Let's. Sorry about that. I just want to pull this up. You don't have to share
Yeah,
it if
go for
you
it.
don't want to, but
I'll pull it up.
I've got this. One of the things that I mentioned last stream was, in regards to what you were just saying about Buonanotte in terms of cover, was all we really had was Golding and Will Alves, and they are both not even on the bench. So, in my opinion, I still really want them to get a loan move before the transfer window closes, to be
Yeah.
honest, if we are to make more signings. Because if you look, they're not even on the bench. So, where's the development? Do you know
Well,
what I mean?
that's well, as we say, so they probably are going to go out on loan. That's fair enough. And look, I think
Yeah.
a lot of people have said that they believe in Will Alves, but I think that's being way too optimistic. Sean's just put here that Reece Nelson's a winger. Well, actually, when he played at Hoffenheim in Holland, he actually played as a second striker, so he can play that position. And he did play under Cooper for the under 20, so he's a player he knows really well. I think like Cooper even sees Reece Nelson as sort of like his adopted son, like he really likes him. So that's a reason why I think that deal could even happen. But if it's not him, it could be someone else. But look, to be fair, we criticise the scouting, but looking at Buonanotte there, I mean, that's the player we were crying out for. We've said it ourselves with our Enzo tip jar, but Enzo Maresca would have worked with Buonanotte 100%. He's got all the attributes you need. Chukwuemeka on loan, I would love to see that. But I don't know. Maybe we don't need him now, though, because we've got enough kind of central mids. I think he's a great player, but it's like, how many can you have? As I say, I think what you need is that flair player. Like Maddison showed us what a real number 10 is. Very impressive Buonanotte. But God, wouldn't you love to have James Maddison back in this team? That would be incredible. If we need someone cheap, why not go to South America? For some reason, Leicester City do not like signing players from South America. I can't remember us ever signing someone directly from South America. We're always linked. We're always linked with them. We were linked with like Prestiani that went to Benfica. We were linked with what was his name? A guy that went to Denmark, Chilean winger Dario Osorio. That's his name. We were linked to Ruben Sosa that's gone to Nottingham Forest. I know there's good players down there, but for whatever reason, we just don't want to get them right away. Yeah, Diego is our next scout, but Cooper has said prior to this season that he wants to have a British core or players that have played in the Premier League. And other than Okoli, Buonanotte played in the Premier League. Oliver Skipp played in the Premier League. Bobby de Cordova-Reid played in the Premier League. That's what he's looking for. And I think he's looking for it because he knows that they're going to adapt right away. And when you're up against it, you don't need that kind of 6 months to 1 year bedding in period. Actually, we didn't mention it, but I'm actually quite glad that Okoli didn't play today. I'm sorry. I think he might blend into it over time, but he looked like a bit of a bomb scare. Whereas we said that Fast could be an accident waiting to happen, but he was very good today. He looked like a Belgian international. Vestergaard, I was very impressed with. So I think there's something to be said there. But yeah, for sure. I think given how much time's in the window, though, I don't really see the South American signing, but surely one day we'll sign somebody. Just give me that Argentinian or Brazilian wonder kid and bring him into the team because it's long overdue. And especially as Brighton have just proved it with Buonanotte there. It's like, why are we not taking chances there? There's got to be good deals to be had there. And if we can, we could really work them out. But anyway, I'm conscious that we've gone for 50 minutes. So what can we say? I mean, that's a breath of fresh air. I'm so much more encouraged. Finally, I'm looking forward to the season. And, I'll say this right now. Even if we get relegated, what you don't want to see is like a wimp, timid, lackluster display where you never even fought for it. And that was my fear. Because you know what? When we went down, that's kind of how we went down. I felt like we went down without a fight. When we did the Great Escape season, for most of that season, I thought we were getting relegated as well. But you know what? In most of those games, we played pretty good. We were unlucky. And I always just felt, we don't have the quality. But you know what? You can't really that much blame at the players. Pearson got a bit of stick. Some people thought he should go. But I always thought he's doing a decent job. We're given a fight, but we're not getting battered every week. That's my real expectation. I just want to see fight in the team, right? Having a go. And today we had a go. at parts, right? Sometimes we hung on. That's going to happen. That when we play Man City, it's not going to be pretty, right? It's not going to be pretty. Same against Arsenal. But if we can continue playing like that, look, I just want to look forward to the stream. And it's funny because I'm on the Foxes Talk forum, and someone just said, he goes, "You've picked the worst possible season to start a YouTube channel." Given what a shit show the season was looking like. So in Cooper we trust. Still a bit early. We said we'd give him 5 or 6 games before we make judgment. But I'll say this, sometimes you do ratings. We've kind of rated the players. How would you rate the managers tonight? What rating would you give him out of 10, Luke?
Cooper?
Yeah.
6.5.
Cool. I would give him a 7.
Yeah.
I'll give him a solid one. I think, look, he's got a result. I didn't expect a result. It could have been worse. Yeah, maybe we rode our luck. But in the end, maybe we could have won it. So not bad. So let's leave it there. Thank you so much. For everyone who's in the comments, would love it if you could subscribe, comment, also follow Luke at Leicester City Down Under. My thing is more to do the analysis. So there will be another video this week where I look much more into the sort of tactics of this game where we won it. The stuff, the diagrams, the GIFs, the animations, all that good stuff will be in it. I'll also look to do a Fulham pre-match. But in the meantime, thank you so much. Up the Leicester. It's been, well, surprisingly a pleasant evening, I would say. Thank you so much. This has been for Fox's Sake TV almost. That's why I chose the name. Have a good one and roll on Fulham.